And we are live. And the space looks awesome. The linears are hung and the lights are set to this cool mood right now. It's fun. I love how it looks. What do you think? What's going on? I'm Sam. Welcome to the world headquarters of Lytei, where we create content to engage with people all over the world on a daily basis, empowering light ideas and telling stories about light. Today, we're excited to partner with Beta Calco and launch Le Louvre, a new linear concept. We're going to tell you a little bit about how this came to be, the concept behind it, and of course show it to you, show you how it works, toss it on the workbench, and break down the details. Use that chat box. Say hi, let us know where you're from. Say hi to your friends. Ask those questions that you have, and we're going to answer them all at the end of the product demo. Also, to make sure you can really see what we're showing you, click that icon and make sure that you're streaming in 1080p. I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes or so walking you through this entire space, talking about Le Louvre and trying to preemptively answer just about every question you'd have. If you want to, you're more than welcome to jump back into your day after that. Or, like I said, ask your questions in the comments and we will address them immediately following this product demo. Thanks again for joining us. It's showtime. Welcome to the studio. Thanks again for joining us. It's great to have you here. I'm sure you're already distracted looking at these amazing gold louvers and Le Louvre and trying to figure out what this thing is. What I can tell you is it really is beautiful, and I wish I could have you here today, but we'll do our best to give you that interactive and immersive experience. You're probably looking at it going, this thing's expensive. I'll let you in on a secret. It's not. More on that later. But for now, I'm just gonna put one number out there. How does $70 a foot sound? In case you haven't noticed, Beta Calco has pretty much been turning heads for the last couple years. They're really innovating products. Beta Calco believes in both art and science. You know, like light, it's an art and a science. They want their products to not only perform well, but be architecturally pleasing as well. By making things architecturally pleasing, it elevates the status of your space while doing its job of properly illuminating it. When it comes to these linear form factors, obviously what you see from below is what's most important, but they took the whole system into consideration. The Louvre itself has this nice concave and chiseled look, but I want to start with the profile. Let's explore the shape and the overall form factor. The linear body is an aluminum extrusion, and it measures just 2.6 inches wide by, well, 4 inches high. That arc shape of the Louvre, it is a signature piece of it, and for that reason, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. But the good news is you can get this in 12-foot sections, 8-foot sections, 6-foot sections, or those 4-footers that are hung up there at different mounting heights. Don't forget though, you can run these continuous, up to 50 feet with a single line voltage power drop. When it comes to linear lighting, there's kind of two options. It can either blend in or stand out. Let me flip the lights to a more normal setting in the studio, and we'll take a closer look at these louvers and how they can be homogeneous or really become that statement in the space. Do you see how there's 3 different Louvre options here? You've got that black in the middle with the silver up top and a frosted look on the bottom. Each one of those offers a different variety. Like any linear form factor, it's important that you have good glare control. So the Louvre doesn't only look good, but it also offers you the option to have superior glare control. What's nice about this is it's an injection molded plastic, and it comes in 5 different finishes, which I just happen to have over here on the wall that I can show you. On the right-hand side, you've got the frosted. Then you've got black and 3 electroplated finishes: satin chrome, satin gold, and satin champagne. If you want, you can make the Louvre any color you want, but at that point, it would be wet painted. When it comes to efficacy in this system, it's going to vary depending on which color you select. The frosted solution is the most efficient at 140 lumens per watt. If you use something like this gold electroplated, it's going to be just a bit less, and the black is the least efficient. However, all of them still deliver a sufficient amount of light to the space. If you're familiar with UGR, each one of these has a UGR rating. The frosted complies with UGR 19, while the plated finishes meet UGR 13 and the black meets UGR 9. There's actually a pretty fancy detail when it comes to putting this louver together that I can show you over on the workbench. So, as you can see, I've got two frosted louvers here. Each one of these has a set of teeth on it, which you can kind of see. What's nice is they just mate together to create that seamless transition of light. I'm gonna move this around on the workbench just a little bit, cut to the room and say hi, so that I can trick you, and we'll go back to the workbench. Can you see where that seam is? Oh, there it is, right in the middle. I bet you it was tough to tell, isn't it? I'll give you one more look at this, so you can try and find where those seams are. It's pretty well done, isn't it? How you guys doing, by the way? Are you hanging in there? I hope so, because next, we're gonna talk about what's going on with that mounting system right there. All right, so if we look in the space, there's obviously a suspended mounted version, right? We've got these two 12-footers here. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but this 12-footer is actually two 6-foot sections, while that is a single span with just suspension on either end. The suspension connections are typical aircraft cable with grip lock systems. The end of the luminaire would have this plate mounted to it with a grip lock that just screws into place and is spring action loaded. If you have that midsection, this actually has the ability to slide back and forth. And you can see there's a grip lock with a cable that just comes down into it too. Moving on from the suspended version, there's two recessed versions in here. We've got one up in the ceiling in grid and one in a floating cloud that mimics a jip. The jip mounted version has both a trim and a trimless option. For the trimless, you're obviously gonna mud it in, but for the trim, there's a great option to install it from below with these rotating crossbars that I have installed here. Check out what this looks like real quick. It's pretty fancy, not to mention, I was able to install it myself, so it can't be that difficult, can it? Let's talk distribution real quick too. This direct-indirect system, it's built around a batwing and a Lambertian cone. The asymmetric is coming soon. It'll kick light out at a 10 to 15 degree angle to help give you a wall wash. With the ability to sort of pick your poison, this indirect can actually crank out up to 1600 lumens per foot. The direct version can do up to 1200 lumens per foot. And again, that's coming off the board. So you have to think about which louver you're putting on there and what kind of a light loss you'll have due to that. I tell you what, let me kill all the lights in this room real quick and I'll show you what the distributions look like. Hang tight. So check out this downlight. I will mention these are at 70 inches off the floor, 6 feet on center for demo purposes, so you'd be hanging them a little bit higher. But you get the feeling of how this puts a nice, even cast of light across the floor. I will mention also, these louvers will have a slightly varied distribution depending on which louver you pick, anywhere from a 70 degree down to almost a 40 degree. If I turn this off, what we'll do is we'll click on the uplight next. You can see the batwing system does its job, throwing light far right and far left, helping to illuminate that space. This is the workhorse, the powerhouse, where you can get up to 1600 lumens per foot. If we take a trip to the back of the room, that silver one is 2 feet from the ceiling and 10 feet from the floor. With the silver louver in it, it has a nice downlight distribution. And the uplight is kicking right to left to fill that 12-foot space in my ceiling cavity with room to spare. Looking at the louver, you can see how it's well illuminated, but it's not obtrusive. It's almost actually something that's interesting to look at. But think about that for a second and let's compare it to the one just below it. Below it is the gold one with the black louver, and you'll notice how this gives it a more intimate feel. All the while, you're still delivering light in both directions, which is important. This is hung 8.5 feet off the floor and 3.5 feet from the ceiling. Last but not least is that white housing with the frosted louver on it. If I dim this down, what starts to happen is the louver itself is revealed. And what's really nice about this is on a typical linear product, you would have a lens that just captures light all the way across. Whereas the concavity and the texture of this louver not only articulate the shape of this product, but also provide good glare control. That's really exciting, given the fact this is also what you're looking at every day. Bringing it all the way back up in the room again, you can see how this does a great job of throwing up and down and side to side. When we look at the two systems that are installed in the ceiling in here, we have both the grid and we have one mimicking JIP over in the cloud above the workbench. I'll show you some close-up footage that we took of these earlier in the day to give you a good look of how they both fit into the space. Both of these have a frosted louver on them, which again adds subtle contrast and does a good job of glare control. They're both easy to mount. I mean, heck, that JIP one I did myself. Look how easy those rotating crossbars are and how good and simple that application is. All right, let's talk finishes here on the workbench. We've got a nice bronze. We've got red, we've got blue, silver, black, and white. As you can see, this is kind of a pile of what we like to call textured finishes. They have a metallic sheen to it, and if I sparkle kind of this silver back and forth, you can see that sheen to it. If I grab something like the darker bronze, it's still pretty obvious that you can see how it sparkles back and forth. They also have glossy options, kind of like this gold. In total, they have 9 standard painted finishes, and then in addition to that, they also have 2 wood finishes, one being a light cherry and another being a dark walnut. There are some constraints to these finishes, so make sure you talk to the factory ahead of time for using these. What this wood does though, is it really turns Le Louvre into a statement piece. As you can see on this end cap, there's these teeth in the bottom. Let me grab the bronze and show you. Maybe you can see it even a little bit better on the red. You see those teeth sitting in there? What those teeth are there for is to take those teeth on the louver and mate everything together so that it's a nice, clean, seamless look. And what that allows this to do is make sure everything's also held in place over time. Let's look at the cross section real quick. If you look from bottom to top, you have the louver along with a frosted lens. The board is mounted with a reflector on either side. Those 2 metal tabs are what join 2 pieces together, which I'll talk about in a second. And then there's a channel on top for both the uplight component and the drivers along with integral emergency. Here's a closer look at the downlight component. This itself is a 2-foot board. That 2-foot board is built around the 2-foot limit constraints that the louver has. This thing mounts with some clips, has a reflector on either side, and then the lens would lay on top of it, and then the Louvre would snap in. Back to the claw, those teeth. Let's assume that you didn't have one section, but you had a second section that needed to join together. You can simply take the teeth, slide it in place, and mate it together. From there, these 2 bolts slide through this mounting plate that has 2 nuts that screw down on top of it, allowing this thing to come real nice and tight together. Let's take a quick look at that 12-footer in the space to see what this looks like. Remember how I mentioned earlier that this 12-footer was made of 2 6-foot sections? Can you even see that hairline seam? There it is right there. Nice and simple. It's clean and it's really even hard to pick up unless I zoom in and we're really looking for it. What's nice about that is there's also no light leaks. So if we take one more peek into this top housing, you can see that everything kind of hides up in the top channel. There's room for a driver, and believe it or not, there's also room for emergency. Now getting all those separate circuits along with emergency power into it would be a bit difficult considering you have to have all these wires integrated into there. But Beta Calco's done a nice job of creating one single clear braided cable that's got a silver finish to it inside of that clear coating. That way you can easily, maybe just blend in with the space a bit more. It's not one of those cheap plastic looking white or black cords that sometimes you do see installed on those linear products. Now, that uplight component is something that is optional. This is an uplight module, which would be installed ahead of time at the factory. You can see it's got a little quick connect on it and it's self-contained. what happens is it just drops into place, and there'd be screws on this rail that mount it, holding it in there. What's nice is it can be easily removed to maintain the driver or rewire anything, should that be something that you're trying to get your hands into. Should you not be interested in an uplight component, there's a blank plate that would run across the top of here. That blank plate makes sure that everything is protected up here. It also keeps dust and debris out. You could also alternatively have an uplight component in one section and a blank plate in the next section. Say if you wanted to avoid illuminating an HVAC duct or something to that nature. All right, I think that's everything on the workbench. So last but not least, let's talk two things: lead times and pricing. There is no quick ship for Le Louvre because you don't need one. Everything is 2 to 4 weeks for a standard lead time. And I'll let you in on a little secret. That white one with the frosted louver is what's gonna go out the door fastest. But any color, any standard louver option that you want, any length, 4, 6, 8, 12, continuous up to 50 single power drops, it all ships in 2 to 4 weeks. That's not bad, is it? I mean, then again, who really needs a quick ship product? We all know lights show up on site and they sit there for like 6, 8, 12, 14 weeks. Gotta wipe the dust off them. They lose the instructions. Anyways, I digress. Are you ready for the finale? Of course I haven't forgot about the price, but we had to save the best for last. I tell you what, I better button up for this because it's impressive. And we want to look good for the official announcement, don't we? Depending on what you want to do with it, whether or not it's a continuous, a single section, it's going to range anywhere between $70 and $90 a foot. The good news is though, there's a whole bunch of people out there that can help you get perfect detailed pricing thanks to Beta Calco's on-demand pricing system. Just give your local rep a call and they'll give you an exact price for everything. Last thing, before I let you go, or should I say, before we start answering all the questions that you have, pull out your smartphone. You're on it already? I get it, it's easy to get distracted. But do me a favor, follow us. Follow Lytei and follow Beta Calco on social media. We put real news out there. We tell real stories. I promise, we're not messing around. We want you to be informed and we don't want to take too much of your time. So social media is a great way to connect with both of us and learn what's new. Thanks for hanging out. If you need to jump back into your day, totally cool. Off you go. If you can stick around, if you got a question, if you have already put it in the comments, they're coming in. I can see them piling up right now. If you want to put one in, put one in. I need a quick break. I need like 10 seconds. Water, go and grab a chair, and then we're going to answer questions, walk you around the room and everything else. Sound good? Cool. Be right back. What do you guys think? It's pretty cool, isn't it? I've really just got to admit, the Louvre, I could sit here and stare at it all day. Not joking. Probably wouldn't be the most productive thing to do, but they really did a good job of just thinking about this thing holistically. By the way, if you ever tried this knockoff fizzy water, knockoff LaCroix from Whole Foods, the lime's pretty good. That arc, the chiseled effect. What's crazy is this thing is electroplated and there's almost like a two-tone effect or look to it, but it moves as you move. And that's what's exciting to me. One other thing that I thought about that I wanted to share with you is when it comes to these louvers, when you have the frosted, the black, or the 3 electroplated finishes, the beam distribution will vary just a little bit. So you get like a 70-degree beam from the frosted, about a 53-degree for the electroplated finishes, and then when you have the black, it's that nice intimate 40-degree beam angle, which is that middle one back there, the gold with the black Louvre, in case you didn't quite catch that earlier. I know in this wide camera it's a little tough to tell, but you can see how it really kind of sucks all the light down into place. What other questions you guys have? You can type them in the chat and we'll make sure that we get answers for you. I've got a direct connection to Beta Calco here, so I can answer everything on the fly, which is actually a lot of fun. Moritz, you had one question about the louvers actually casting light down, and does that affect the angle? Yeah, we talked about that. But when it comes to the surface of the louvers itself, it doesn't really affect the color. You probably remember in the shot where I turned everything off in the room, maybe it looked like a little gold on the ground. That's literally just the light reflecting off my carpet. But you've got standard color temperatures, and those CCTs will come straight through these louvers, and the louvers won't really change that color at all, which is a good thing. I had just a couple questions on warm dim. Unfortunately, warm dim is not an available option right now. But speaking of options, when it comes to output, they do have the ability to put BIOS boards in here. So if you're looking to achieve some good circadian lighting on a project, or comply with the well building standard or something like that, Le Louvre and BIOS is an option. If you want to talk more about warm dim, just get in touch with your regional sales manager or your local rep, and they can funnel that question back up to Beta Calco and talk to you more about why that's something that you'd want. Another question on whether or not you have regular PW dimming versus 0 to 10 volt dimming. If the question is, can you just offer standard like phase dimming instead of 0 to 10 volt dimming, the drivers are standard as 0 to 10 volt, both to 1% and 0.1%. If you want a phase dimming driver, that would be a custom at that point, which Beta Calco could work with you on. It would have to do with sourcing the driver, if it can fit in the top of that housing. Just so you know, there are some things out there on the market that will actually take a phase dim signal and convert it into a 0 to 10 volt signal. So that might be a workaround for you as well, just depending on the application. One more question on the exact measurements of the cross section of it. It's 4.18 inches tall by 2.6 inches wide, and that is from edge to edge of this suspended version. The recessed body doesn't have this nice clean finish because obviously you don't see what's recessed up in the ceiling, but the depth is about equivalent, and hopefully you saw that earlier up on the cloud up there, pointing on the cloud in my office, not in the sky. So yeah, thanks, really good questions. Let's see if I think we might have just a couple more coming in. Let me toss you on the workbench real quick, and I'll show you one thing about mounting that I think is just fun. I know that grip lock is something that everybody hears and is probably familiar with, but I just like to remind people how fancy grip lock is. And by fancy, I mean simple. Just a threaded piece. You know, this is what goes onto the ceiling. You drive a screw straight down through that, and that would suck right up on top of the surface. And then you've just got a simple cable with a chrome connector on it. What's nice about their cables is it has this clear coating on it, and it makes it smooth, makes it easy to slide things back and forth. You're not gonna nick your fingers or anything like that. It's pretty fancy, isn't it? And of course, my favorite, all the finish options. What do you think of that red? It's kind of fancy. This one is absolutely my favorite, that midnight metallic blue. You can see it goes from almost being like a dark blackish, grayish, but it really starts to sparkle. Obviously I'm moving it back and forth, but if you were walking around the space, what you would be able to see is kind of fun. So let's see, what other questions do you guys have? Anything else coming in? There was one other thing I wanted to mention, and I do have one more question to answer. Where do these ship from? Great question. Beta Calca headquarters in Toronto, Canada. It's just north of that U.S.-Canadian border. But everything is made in Canada. That's where their primary facility in North America is. And that 2 to 4 week lead time is obviously from order to production. So then once things go out the door, there are going to be certain freight times that you have to allow for, depending on whether or not you're air freighting these, whether or not it's on a dedicated truck or just part of another freight shipment. I think it takes an 18-wheeler about 4 days to get across the country. So all depends where you are. I think that's it for questions. If you have any more questions, feel free to send us a DM, send us an email, talk to Beta Calco, but wherever we are, we're here to answer your questions. And let us know what you think of this live stream. If you like more, tune in. We should hopefully be doing more of them soon. Otherwise, I'll see you later. Take care.